Welcome back to the Adult Lady Traveler's Guide. I'm your adult storyteller. In our last episode, we packed the ultimate adult suitcase. We stripped everything down to the absolute essentials, looking at the ingenious, minimalist gear women carried. From ancient physical sunblock and the portable yatate writing kit, to anti-theft hemp ropes and the reality of never changing your underwear on the road. We have our own Tegada travel permit in our pocket, our heavy coins tied securely around our waist, and our bags are officially packed. But wait, you don't just finish packing and instantly teleport onto the highway. What actually happened in those crucial, chaotic days right before departure? Today, we are going to look behind the scenes at the real moving day madness of adult women. From taking a luxurious last-minute sightseeing tour to dealing with husbands getting scammed by local merchants, to tearful goodbyes with beloved pets. Let's find out exactly what these women were doing before they finally step into their palanquins. What these adult women were actually doing in the days right before they hit the road, let's look at the noblewoman we mentioned in the episode 4, Ju Xingyin. Remember her? She was the old lady who complained, "I'm 64 years old and you still want me to move back to the countryside." According to her records, in April of the previous year, she had tearfully moved from her comfortable life in Edo to Nobeoka in Kyushu. Because it was so sudden, her living conditions were terrible. But just 2 years later, in October, the shogunate suddenly ordered, "You can return to Edo." When Ju Xingyin heard this news, she thought she was dreaming. She was so happy she was screaming internally, "Hurry up! And let's go! Let's go!" Furthermore, she wrote a very proud passage in her diary. She said that although crossing a vast ocean route in the winter would be a grueling for her as a weak woman, between the lines, she didn't feel disadvantaged at all. Instead, it was a symbol of, even though I am a woman, I can still accomplish this difficult journey. So how did her pre-trip preparations actually go? The answer is super high efficiency. So high that she actually had time to go sightseeing because the shogunate told her she only needed to arrive in the spring. After she finished all her packing, she realized that there was still a long, leisurely period before her departure date. She thought to herself, "It's so rare to come all this way to Nobeoka in Kyushu. It would be a huge waste if I left without looking around." So just 3 days before her departure, she took a massive entourage of family and friends including Jin, Cho, Tada, Hato, Yasu, Nakuro, and her grandson on a ground outing to view the flowers and visit shrines for a farewell pilgrimage. The funniest part is while they were viewing the flowers, a wind chime suddenly rang, and a cute little dog ran out. Zhu Xingyin absolutely loved it and even had the idea of picking the dog up to take back to her new home. You see, this is exactly like us modern people having our suitcases packed early before a flight, and then going out shopping and having afternoon tea the day before. Even behind the strict protocols of noble travel in ancient times, there was still such a real, endearing sense of everyday life. Zhu Xingyin was relaxed because she was going back home, which is Edo. But if you encountered a sudden kunigae, which means domain transfer, meaning an order from the shogunate to uproot the entire family and move to a completely unfamiliar place, the situation was entirely different. Let's look at the real diary of another samurai wife, Otowako. In the winter of 1845, her family suddenly received a domain transfer order. It was a bolt from the blue, because the last time their family had to execute a massive move was 80 years ago. The elders were long gone, and the younger generation had absolutely no idea what a domain transfer entailed. The entire family plunged into epic chaos. What is the most troublesome part of a massive move? Getting rid of your belongings, of course. At this time, the happiest people were the local second-hand merchants. The merchants swarmed in like sharks smelling blood, realizing the family was desperate to unload items, and started ruthlessly slashing prices. In her diary, Otowako vividly roasted her samurai husband and relatives. She wrote that the merchants used their silver tongues to push the prices incredibly low. But because the samurai cared too much about saving face and felt it was beneath them to haggle with merchants, they acted rich and sold off all the family's luxury goods, like instruments, high-end vanity tables, gold boards, and even pots and pans, at absolute bargain bin, fire sale prices. Even worse, when they had to buy travel gear from the merchants, the samurai were treated like absolute cash cows, paying premium prices for cheap junk. Watching all this, Otowako helplessly wrote, selling high-value items for cheap and buying cheap items for high prices. This is the sorrow of the samurai. Although she was frustrated watching her husband get scammed, Otowako was actually a very gentle person. While packing, she specifically instructed everyone, do not pack too much luggage. Why? Because the people who had to carry the luggage were the lowest ranking ashigaru, which means foot soldiers. If the luggage was too heavy, these bottom tier workers would suffer immensely. From this tiny detail, you can see Otowako's warm and considerate nature toward her subordinates. Amidst this chaotic packing hell, Otowako, just like Juicing still managed to squeeze in time for farewell rituals. Before leaving, she took her children to the mountain temples to pray and swept their ancestors' graves. She wrote sadly in her diary, this might be the last time we ever see each other, won't it? She couldn't stop her tears. Aside from saying goodbyes to people, she had one attachment she couldn't let go of, her pet dog. She had rescued this dog on a freezing autumn night years ago after hearing its faint whimpers and raised it out of pity. On the day of departure, Otowako called the dog over, gave it one last meal, and cried uncontrollably while petting it. She wrote in her diary, I hope you can live well from now on. It is said that the dog sat quietly listening to its owner's sorrows, almost as if it understood. Just imagine this scene breaks your heart. Alright, tears wiped away. It's finally time to get into the palanquin and depart. But wait, just as Otowako had one foot stepping into the carriage, she suddenly screamed, No, I forgot something incredibly important. Guess what she forgot? Forgot her money? Forgot her permit? Nope. She actually sprinted back into the emptied house to pray to the Bimbo Gami, which means God of Poverty. That's right, the God that makes people poor, because there was a superstition back then that if you properly worshipped the God of Poverty before moving, he would take the poverty away and leave the good fortune behind. After praying, Otowako happily got back into her palanquin, writing in her diary, after praying, I suddenly felt a refreshing sense of finally escaping poverty. It was utterly amusing. When the palanquin finally began to move, leaving behind the row houses that used to be filled with laughter, Otowako looked back at the tightly closed doors, the overgrown empty houses, and the servants left behind to watch the estate, quietly waving straw sandals. Her heart was a swirl of emotions. A journey forced by political orders officially began right there, wrapped in a chaotic, sentimental, and slightly absurd atmosphere. And just like that, the journey begins. Whether it was the cheerful, flower-viewing noblewoman, Zhu Xingyin, or the tearful samurai wife, Otowako, sprinting back to appease the god of poverty. These final moments before departure are incredibly human and so easy to relate to. They've packed their bags, said their goodbyes, and finally stepped into their palanquin. But before they can even make a dent in their journey, they have to face the ultimate unpredictable final boss of Edo travel, Mother Nature. In our next episode, we are going to see how a commoner woman managed to pull off an impromptu girls' trip, and we'll dive straight into a brutal meteorological realities of Edo period. From scorching summer heat to begging for water at the construction sites, the Edo weather survival game is about to begin. Before we wrap up, I want to specifically let everyone know that the content of every single episode of the Edo Lady Traveler's Guide is the crystallization of my hard work, painstakingly researched by reading a massive amount of specialized books, academic papers, and ancient documents by Japanese scholars. I hope by passing on this knowledge, this history comes alive. If you like the stories I've put together, please subscribe to the Edo Lady Traveler's Guide, leave a 5-star review, and share the show with even more friends. This is the greatest encouragement in the world for an Edo storyteller like me. I'm your Edo storyteller, and I will see you next time. Bye!